You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, Spike, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution in trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Friday. It is noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. It is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever insightful Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, wherever you get this fine program, as well as all the other fun stuff that we do throughout the week, keep rating and reviewing. It really does help the legion of new listeners discover this program, everything else we're doing here on the network. You can argue it's more important than ever here in 2021 as these markets make less and less sense day in, day out. So help those folks find their way to a reliable source for information. Keep rating and reviewing. Keep those questions and comments coming too. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. And let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. First, joining us from his fortress-like compound there on the dark and stormy shores of Maine, we are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the Volatility Views program, sir.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure, Mr. Longo, to be here. And actually, everything fits your MO today. It's foggy, it's raining, and it is a little gloomy and scary. So there you go. It's fitting just your motif. The whole MO is.
If I keep saying it often enough, it eventually will come true, sir. See?
Yes, that's what I tell myself.
By the way, I had someone bug me who's actually knows the network pretty well, bug me this week, asking me out of the blue, what is the rock lobster's name? Does he go by Drew? You always call him the Rock Lobster. I didn't think it was a mystery what your name was, sir. But Mr. Rock Lobster, how do you prefer to go by? Are you an Andrew or a Drew?
I am an Andrew at this point.
There you go. I thought I'd call you Andrew the Rock Lobster every time, but apparently I confused someone. So there we go. Name is Andrew, in case you're wondering.
I can't believe anybody cares. I'm shocked.
In case you're confused by all this Rock Lobster moniker thing. Yeah, he's not a Drew. Not really a Drew. All right, then let's go around the horn out to the MIAX hot seat where we are joined once again, Mr. Tom Jark, the volatility product specialist over there at MIAX. Tom, welcome back to Volatility Views, sir.
Thank you, Mark, and good to talk with you again, and Andrew as well. Mr. Rock Lobster. What's my nickname going to be? We got to come up with a nickname, I think.
We do.
Let's have a review session first before we come up with one.
Well, it's one of those things. You got to be on the show a lot. Then I start to get a sense for your strengths and, more importantly, your weaknesses, and that's where the nickname arises from. So
yeah, that's a long list, I guess, with me. But
or in the case of the Rock Lobster, it's mostly geographically oriented. So there we go. And based off a bad song from the 80s. All right, then, with the team assembled, let's dive right on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's dive on into the Volatility Review, the portion of the program. We break down the week that was and still is from a vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity perspective across the broad gamut of volatility. Going to talk the options, the futures, going to talk the cash indices floating around out there. Going to get into all sorts of fun stuff, maybe some single name vol, you name it, the various ETPs that go along with the vol space. Going to cram it all into a 1 hour show, listeners. It's a daunting task, but I think we can do it. Coming into showtime now, if you were worried, if you were a bull out there and you were hemming and hawing saying, oh no, maybe the bloom is off the rose, all this red on the screen will coming into today. Don't worry, your fears have been allayed yet again. All the major indices firmly in the green. Kicking off the show here, we got the S&P closing in on 0.9% to the upside. We've got Dow up a similar level, about 0.8%. NASDAQ playing the rare laggard today, only up about 0.4%, so not even 0.5% for the NASDAQ. And of course, all this green on the screen means some red on the vol screen. Coming into the start of the show, we had spikes at right around 19 even. That puts it down a little over a point, about 1.15 points from last show. VIX cash is at about 1875, so that puts it down almost exactly 1.5 handles from our last show. And VVIX, very strange, very interesting. VVIX, we were talking for a long time how throughout most of the pandemic period, it was glued north of 120. It couldn't really break it. And now at about 100 coming into showtime. That's the lowest we've seen it in quite some time, down 15 points from this time last week, which is kind of interesting because you can't really argue vol hasn't been moving, and yet VVIX coming in quite a bit. So there's a lot of stuff to discuss, a lot of stuff to parse. Let's start in the land of the rockingest of lobsters, or as we'll call him for the rest of this show, Drew. Mr. Drew, a lot to parse. What's Volman up to out there, and what do you make of this somewhat anemic VVIX, sir?
Well, I don't know if it was on last week or the week before, we were covering a lot of the nature of what was going on with vol. And in January, February, the story was all up, right? Do you recall that? Like everything up. Oh, GameStop, the stock number up $500, stuff like crazy YOLO upside madness, right? Then you got Kathy Wood, her ARK funds up, like just everything was up. And now things are chilling, right? This 4,000, although today we're up almost 1%. And so, again, we're almost up. We're trying to get to 4,000, it looks like. The NASDAQ's not doing much to help. But you don't have the crazy up anymore. A lot of the upside vol has come out. VIX has come out. VVIX has come out. Again, you've got the back month of the curve is kind of steep because back month vol in SPX is a little higher. And you have the only thing I can think of is just willing sellers of the short-term vol. So there isn't simply the demand for options is going down. That is the easiest way to think about it. And demand for options is going down. We're probably going to have the lowest fixed close today and I would say probably in a year easily. So you need demand to keep those option premiums perky. And, we're getting a little bit back to what I would call like let's say pre-pandemic levels. But I mean, you think about it too, is we've had a couple of moves down. Yesterday, classic example, when we were doing our Option Pit Trader show, which we'll be putting out that link and stuff. Market goes down, doesn't go down very much, stops dead. It's almost like, I don't know, maybe the Fed has their finger on the buy button. You had higher oil prices. This big container ship is stuck in the Suez Canal. Like anything that used to be bad news just isn't bad news anymore. I'm coming to the conclusion. So it doesn't matter when the Fed is spending this much money. And I guess Powell's remarks are okay because they're like, oh, there's no inflation from all this stuff. This is going to be totally fine. And as of right now, the market's believing all of it. So what are you going to do? You're just going to sit here and watch it and watch stocks go up. And that's usually bad for vol. But you see, like if I go across the line, like the ARKG funds, all of those hyper growth, all that stuff has really come down to earth. You're not, they were up so much last year. There's some profit taking, maybe looking for value stocks, divvy stocks, stuff like that. But definitely some money is coming out of them. And overall, that's a vol damper. And when you're damping vol, VVIX comes down. A lot of the juices actually in the futures, those are kind of expensive already. So it's just, everything's kind of settling a little bit, which we haven't had that in a year. So the only thing I'd say is it would not surprise me to see a lower VIX. Of course, you're going to have the crystal ball next week for next week, but it's not going to surprise me to see a lower number just because realized vol is starting to actually get there. 10-day vol is 11%. So it is not going to surprise me to see a lower VIX number at all.
Not going to surprise anyone, it seems, given what we're seeing out there in the markets today. Let's head on out now back to the land of MIAX. Mr. Tom, I know you've been busy working on a lot of stuff. We'll get to all that fun stuff in a little bit. But first, what's been lighting up your tape out here in the land of volatility since the last time we chatted, sir?
Let me think here. So the last time we chatted was a few weeks ago. But well, first I want to say that just a reminder that the MIAX there is a Miami office, but they're based in Princeton, New Jersey. So I'm in New Jersey, not in Miami, just to be clear.
The New Jersey hot seat doesn't sound as fun, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
sounds like something from The Sopranos.
I mean, it's just, this vol dampening continuation. I mean, Andrew hit on a lot of the valid points here, but one thing I find really interesting was I look at a lot of my charts on my systems are all defaulted to 1 year, and when you look at anything with a vol metric going back 1 year, we're starting to lose sight of those big volatile movements of last year. So like in a week or so, those couple of spikes we had up, the peaks of vol are going to disappear off your 1 year chart. So, we're still way above the pre-pandemic highs. We definitely could see some more grinding lower. Next week with you've got, spring breakers heading away. I think it's the first. I feel like this time around is the first vacation scenario or spring break scenario with the schools being closed that people are going to go away. So with the holiday next week and then we've got a shortened week. I just think you could definitely see some more dampening here, and I would agree that we're probably going to close on a spikes VIX low today. And with that, I mean the vol of vol. If you want to use VVIX as the measurement or the future Viking, there's just been things are dampening, and it's just been a lot less demand for these options. What was I going to say? The other, and the other aspect too is that with the SPX, the SPYs, all the stuff, just approaching these highs again, and that's what the volatility metrics we use. It's just that catalyst to get that jump through on the high end is just I can't envision it personally, but I'd be really curious to know how much of the relief funds people actually put in the market, because you hear a lot of talk about that. That'd be a great stat to know the exact answer to. I'd be really curious. We'll never know, but we can guesstimate. What else is on my mind? Just just looking at all the indicators, everything's just kind of grinding lower. Whether it's implied correlation and things like that. I mean, it's just another thing I want to mention too is that I was watching the markets pretty closely this week, and we had that breakdown. I thought the Russell had a good chance of at that 2100 level. It was holding that well, and I thought we had a chance of just kind of a little disaster below there if you look at any kind of charts. But everything just kind of reversed quite quickly.
Yeah, the Russell took a nice drubbing, and then you're right, has kind of bounced a little bit. If you want to hear more about all things Russell 2000, the vol, the skew, check out Twifo. Just hit the network yesterday. Did a deep dive into that with the folks over there at FTSE Russell. A lot of you folks, even if you haven't been watching small caps in the past, suddenly very interested in small caps. Talk about RBX on that show, which is, of course, the VIX of the Russell 2000. You may not know that exists. There is such a thing as the VIX of the Russell 2000. It's not really tradable anymore. It used to be for a very brief window in time, hoping to get that back. That'd be kind of nice. I think seems like a no-brainer right now to have a volatility product on one of the most active and volatile indices out there right now. But alas, we do not. But we do have indices on things like S&P vol. In particular, you kind of just mentioned it as an indicator, Tom. Listeners always want to know the status, so give us a quick update of our favorite out there. We're just talking about VVIX down at 100. What's cooking in the land of V-Spikes, a.k.a. the Vikings, sir?
That is still, pending a public launch but on the T3 index site, it is on there to look at, but it's not been vetted for public consumption yet. So Simon has it on his company's website, but it's not nothing being backed at the moment by any of the exchanges.
Oh, you're right. I do see it there. Is that about a 97.82? So in a similar boat to the old VVIX, listeners, a little bit shy of 100. So interesting times. I didn't think we'd see a V-Spikes or a VVIX shy of 100 anytime soon, but yet there we are, listeners. Interesting times abounding. Speaking of interesting times, let's get on out into the realm of the futures. Let's start in Spikes futures land. Tom, I know when you haven't been on the show, you've been busy out there cranking away on the market maker side of the fence out there for Spikes futures, turning the volume knob up to 11, sir. What have you guys been cooking up over there in the land of Spikes futures, sir?
So we've been really busy, just really analyzing everything and talking to a lot of people, players, market participants. Right now you're seeing some decent quotes. The volumes are a little bit on the lighter side, but it's tradable. It's there. So we're what's happening is MGX and MIAX are rolling out a what we call a incentive plan. For the listeners that aren't aware, many exchanges offer, for certain proprietary products, they offer incentives for market makers to make, tighter markets, deeper markets, try to incentivize them to trade more volume, so they can be there for the client base, for the anybody that wants to take markets. We got a pretty aggressive program out, and I was going to bring up my snare drum so I could play my snare drum, but I figured I'd spare you guys. But one of the big parts of this is that we're kind of during this period from April, May, June, the exchange fees on the Spikes futures are going to be waived. So we won't be charging, and that's to all participants in the market. And then for the market makers and liquidity providers, some need to sign up, some don't. There's you have to come, reach out to someone at MIAX to discuss it, but. Basically, the program is 3-tiered. One is for quoting, one is for quoting and size, and one is a volume incentive. So we're really, making a big, it's been well received, as you can imagine. So, I hope you'll see some upticks in volumes and some more news on that end. And then, for anybody out there that's trying to look at, I know some platforms don't have the Spikes futures, visible yet. If you just need to reach out to your support team, if you're at a firm or if you're on your own, reach out to your favorite support desk at your favorite vendor, because it's I do realize that some of the systems don't have the product on there yet, which is a little frustrating, but I understand why. That's been the main thing. But we're really excited about this, and we've reached out to a lot of people. So it's coming soon.
That's good to hear. Love to see a lot of movement out there on the spikes futures front, because of course that'll drive even more flow out there in the spikes option. Speaking of the futures, let's get on out to the VIX futures term structure right now. Coming into showtime, we still had that plateau shape, even though it is, let's say, a few handles below where it was. Remember, it was plateaued around 28 not too long ago in the latter portion of the curve. Listeners, it has, of course, come off from there. It's down about 25.75 or so in the latter portion of the term structure right now. Coming into today's show, the April future, seeing about a 2.5 point premium to the cash kicking off the show. That's about almost a full point lower than it was this time last week. May future kind of just coming on the board over there on our show, at least for our analysis, the front portion of the curve last week, and it's at about a 4.5 point premium to the cash out there. So Mr. Rock Lobster, that plateau still exists out there. It's just getting a little bit lower. Anything catching your eye out there in the VIX futures term structure this week, sir?
It's just normalizing. I think that's the easiest thing to say. I wish I had something great, but it is coming back to what I would call a more normal levels. However, historically, again, we did a little bit of historical data analysis at Option Pit, and those futures are still well above where the cash is or would be, sort of on a historical basis. So there's usually some kind of discrepancy, right, between the back month vol and the front month vol. You can just do a rough average of it. And right now, what the curve is saying is like the vol right now is pretty low in near term, and it's abnormally high still in the back. So for all of I will just call that maybe forever and a day, that is the COVID premium in the back. It used to be the election premium. Now it is the COVID premium, and it still has not gone away. So I don't know when it will go away. Maybe when there's 200 million people vaccinated. I think the Europeans are still having all kinds of problems. You still see the lockdown stuff. Again, I don't see how any of that makes any difference anymore at this point. But apparently, governments still like to hold on to it, and I think that's why we still see the premium there, like that. That's still there because I wonder what kind of mandate the government's going to throw down on somebody. So I think that uncertainty is manifesting itself in the longer term, but not necessarily in the very short term at this point.
Good stuff. Let's keep on rolling, see what's lighting it up out here. Let's move on out to the options front. Spikes OI looking like we had, of course, a lot of aggressive three-ways going up on the show last week, and those are still dominating the OI out there in Spikes options land. Let's let's do a top 6 just for fun. Let's mix it up outside of the top 5. There's number 6 out there because they're all kind of tied for number 1 effectively. We'll rank them in order, but you could kind of mix and match your order out here. Number 6, we've got the June 50s. Number 5, the June 25 puts. Remember those kind of verticals / risk reversals that were going up out there. Number 4, we got the April 40s, followed by the April 30s. So that April 30-40 vertical was also trading, as well as the April 18-22 put spread. All of those for 1,000 lots each out there. So a lot of interesting stuff afoot out there in Spikes options land. Moving on out to VIX options. Not a heck of a lot on the tape today, despite the fact that we were talking about some historic levels. I mean, Andrew talking about VIX probably going to close at a 1-year low if it stays on this trend so far. Today, VVIX back at or below 100 right now, which is the first time we've seen that in over a year, I do believe. So we have some historic things going on, and yet not so much from a volume perspective. Closing in on 250,000 contracts right now, 245,000 contracts. That's not bad, but it's not exactly blowing the doors off either. The ADV also getting light out there again, down to about 581,000. That's respectable, certainly, but it's down about 22,000 contracts from our last show, and of course, far below the 700,000 plus contracts we saw out there from the ADV not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago out there. So even though we've seen some vol and some movement out there the last couple of weeks, the ADV in the option side hasn't really held pace. Let's go on out to the top 10 hot positions out there in VIX options land today. If you're wondering, 4 calls in the top 10 right now. So 40%, that's pretty much exactly what it was this time last week. So not much change. Let's see how it breaks down here. Number 10 cost you 116,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land. That's pretty light if you know much about VIX. That gets you to the June 110s. That's still one of my favorite open positions out there in VIX land right now. Number 9, 137,000 of the April doubles, aka the 55 calls. Number 8, 144,000 of the April 30s. Number 7, $1.48 of the May 20 puts. Number 6, $1.58 of the April 21 puts. Number 5, $1.60 of the April 19 puts. Number 4, $1.95 of the April 18 puts. Number 3, 201. Got to go all the way up to number 3 to even break into 200,000 listeners. That gets you to the April 22 puts for 201,000. Number 2, 202,000. So just creeping on up there of the April 60 calls. And number 1 with a fairly anemic bullet, 240,000 of the April 20 puts. Total of about 7.4 million contracts open, about 3.8 million on the calls and about 3.6 million on the puts. So net from an OI perspective, calls ever so slightly outpacing the puts out there. You know, that's kind of aberrant, but hasn't been that aberrant for the last few months. It's kind of been the shape of the last few months. So interesting stuff afoot. Puts still pretty firm out there in terms of interest in VIX options land. Let's go on out to what's lighting it up today. Like we said, not a ton on the tape today, about 250,000 contracts. The most active contract out there today is the SEP 60, SEP 60. That's interesting. Doing exactly 40,000 out there. That's our number 1 most active contract today. That's interesting. Not the strike I would have expected coming into today. Number 2, 15,000. So falling off quite a bit of the April 22 puts. Number 3, 13,000 of the June 20 puts. Number 4, about 12,000 of the May 19 puts. These are all strikes I expected. And then round out the top 5 here, we've got 10,000 of the SEP 32 half. So a couple of SEPs active out there today, which is kind of interesting. Yesterday, exactly 400,000 contracts on the tape, which is interesting in and of itself. 23,000 is the most active of the May 21 puts, followed by 22,000 for number 2 of the April 23 calls, 21,000 number 3 of the May 60s. Back to that 60 strike. This time it's in September. Number 4, almost 21,000 of the April 20 puts, and rounding out our top 5 most actives yesterday, almost 20K of the May 25 puts. Wednesday, even lighter volume, 307,000 contracts. You can start to see why that ADV is eroding, listeners. The most active contract, 30,000 of the May 42 halves, followed by 17,000 of the April 19 puts for number 2. Number 3, 17,000 as well of the April 18 puts. Number 4, 13K of the April 17 puts. And round out the top 5 there, 11,000 of the May 17 puts. Going out to Tuesday, a little bit more paper. So far, at least, it's the most active day of the week, but it isn't that active. Only 539,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract, though, did some paper. 72,000 of the April 30 calls, followed by number 2, 30,000 of the April 24s. Number 3, 27,000 of the April 19 puts. Number 4, 26,000 of the April 18 puts. And round out the top 5 there on Tuesday, almost 17,000 of the April 40s, 40 out there. Interesting. The first day of the week out there, Monday, 405,000 contracts on the tape. So again, kind of light volume all week. But even though the most active, again, did some paper, 73,000 of the April 21 puts were the most active contract on Monday, followed by number 2. You fall off quite a bit, down to 25,000 for the April 23 puts. Number 3, 20,000 of the SEP 42 half calls. Number 4, 20,000 of the April 35 calls. And rounding out the top 5 there on Monday, about 14,000 of the April 22 puts. Mr. Rock Lobster, kind of an anemic week from an overall options perspective out here, but any paper lighting up your tape or the tape of Volman or the tape of the crazies in your pit chat this week, sir, from a VIX options perspective?
Well, that's certainly a big sample of people to ask, right? Like, okay, but okay, so even today, I mean, you're looking at volume. The most active strike in VIX, 15,000 of the April 22 puts, the way I'm looking at it right now. Even like the 17 puts or 15, 20, 18 put, like, so 3,000, 4,000, 6,000. that's just not a ton of volume. So what I would say is, you know, there is some open interest, but really, it's just I think it's just more reflective of watching how long it's going to take VIX go from 19 to 16 at this point, because no sell-offs are really holding. And again, looking at let's say you call it the 21 straddles, about $4 in April, which is around a 17 low. So it's probably one of the cheapest straddles we've seen in a while, with 3 full weeks to go in the cycle. So that's what I would say. It's a tough one from a volume point of view, when there just isn't, when we're not getting any real move out of VIX.
You know what you are getting a real move out of these days, though, Mr. Rock Lobster, is your old friend, the friend everyone loves to fade these days. VXX coming into Showtime, it was at 1175. That puts it down exactly a point from where it was this time last week. It's actually eroded a little more, down to about 1163 right now. You have a chance to get off some of those 11.5 puts by the end of the day out there in VXX if this keeps up. So, yeah, they're down over a point since our last show. Some decent paper on the tape as well. 280,000 contracts on the tape. So VXX, at least as of right now, outpacing VIX options out there, which is kind of interesting. The ADV also pretty robust, 370,000. That's obviously far away from the VIX options, but if VIX continues trending down, and ADV trending down this week in VXX, but if they get a little bit of a bump, we might see these two meet in the middle somewhere around the 400K range pretty soon. ADV 370,000 out there in VXX right now, down about 11,000 from last show. So it's kind of a rough week overall for a lot of the vol products from a volume perspective out there. Let's get on out to the top positions. Exactly 2 million contracts open, not 2.01 or anything, exactly 2 million contracts open out there in VXX right now, which is interesting. Don't see that too often. Number 10, these top positions out there, 25,000 of the June 9 puts. By the way, it is 70-30 puts to calls out there. For a long time, it was only one call to be found, if that, in the top 10 of VXX. Now we're up to 3. By the way, though, those big calls that were, I do believe, the March 20s, those have rolled off the board now. So we got a new number 1 in the big dog spot out here. Number 10, like we said, 25,000 of the June 9 puts. Number 9, our first of 3 calls, 25,600 of the April 27s. Number 8, about 27,000 of the April 11 puts. Number 7, almost 28,000 of the April 13 puts. Number 6, just a tick under 30K for the April 18 calls, our second call on the top 10. Number 5, almost 31,000 of the April 10 puts. 10. That sounds crazy, but it isn't that far away anymore. Number 4, 37,000 of the April 12 puts. These are all strikes too. You think if you get there, we got to be hearing about this reverse split. If you hit the 10 puts, become relevant. Got to be hearing about this reverse split, but I digress. Number 4, 37,000 of the April 12 puts. Number 3, 40,000 almost exactly of the April 15 puts. Number 2, our final call in the top 10, about 41,000 of the April 20. So whoever loved the 20 strike in March, they're just playing out there in April as well. Much less size. I think they're about 80 odd, almost 90,000 on the March 20. It's only about 41,000 so far in April. So not quite with as much gusto. Also, 20 strike a lot less relevant now than it was back in the early days of March. And rounding out the top 10 here, 61,500 of the April 14 puts. Let's get on out there to the top trades out there today. The most active contracts today, about 21,500 of the March 12 calls. These are going out today, so these are obviously the weeklies, listeners. So if I say March, I'm talking about ones going out today, followed by 13,000 of the March 12 puts. Number 3, 10,000 of the March 11 half puts. Number 4, 9,500 of the April 12 calls. And round out the top 5 most actives today, 9,100 of the April 13 calls. It was a little bit of a difficult dance this week because VXX and the vol products themselves all had a little bit of that reversion going on this week, where they reverted back up for a while. VXX got up to that 13 strike or close to it again this week. VIX obviously spiked up into the closer to mid-20s level this week. So it wasn't just set it and forget it, buy your downside and let it go. You had to squirm. You had to work for it a little bit this week. What was lighting up your tape from a VXX options perspective this week, sir?
Yes, you had a scrum. So I guess yesterday I was bemoaning the story as, I dumped all my puts on the rally, just basically for a scratch. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll sell my VXX calls or my VIX. I'll at least get out of them. And then And I'm doing our
You're such an optimistic
yesterday.
guy. You keep buying these VXX calls. You have like 3 minutes to sell those things.
And literally that was it. So I canned the puts. I figured, okay, at least I'll buy the puts because I like to keep a more basically like an overall very short delta, right? So, and then I got busy in the day. I'm like, oh, for sure the sell-off or hold. And Sebastian's like, no, the sell-off is not going to hold. And VIX is not moving. And we're going to rally. And he was totally right. And I ended up not buying my puts back or selling my freaking calls out. So anyway, it was kind of it was a missed opportunity day. Let's put it that way. So I guess ultimately the long story short is you're right. Right now, if you own any upside, and by the way, those calls were totally financed, by the way. So it's like a free ride with them. So, but I wanted to get like the last gasp out of them. And then just, if you don't take the 1 hour of vol that you have to get rid of them, they're going to just end up going to zero. So anyway, that's the long story short. But as far as volume goes, you're not even seeing a lot of VIX because also we're getting to that point where the split's coming. So, how much 1 month VXX or 2 month VXX puts do you want to buy when you think a split's coming and they're just going to go into the land of the lost land of gamma once we have that reverse split. So it's an odd time to trade the product when it gets so close to a split.
I could play the world's tiniest violin for you, sir, but do you have any idea how many trades I have missed here on the network over our 14 plus years? Everyone thinks I'm just surrounded in an array of screens, just trading all day here. But the truth is, like, I'm doing shows for you folks. I'm talking to you folks. I'm seeing trades come and go all the time that I just have no time to hit the button on, let alone if I'm not talking to you folks, I'm prepping to talk to you folks. So there's a lot of that going on. I am surrounded by screens, but quite often they're often tuned on to other things because I have to prep for all these great shows that we do for you folks. So yeah, the litany of trades that I have missed, Mr. Rock Lobster, is long and sometimes depressing to look at. Luckily, I held the course this week. I had a chance to actually double down a little bit when that reversion that went on midweek, so that helped out a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of hard talking to you folks all the time, listeners. And Tom, you're not talking to these folks all the time. You're out there prepping various bits of strategery out there in the realm of volatility and VIX, sir. So what have you been cooking up in your volatility lab these days, sir?
Well, a couple points. First is that, yes, this last week or so, the market is you have to trade the market. You got to be in and out. But picking your points, like that example in the Russell, I was waiting for the, I had some position on in something related, and I was waiting for that little catalyst to break through, and that never happened. And we went sky high, and all the options I owned, the puts I owned in a certain name were expired worthless. That was not fun. Yeah, you got to be nimble in this market. But I was going to say also that I've missed a lot of trades in my career too, especially working at a bank for most of my career. I had to there was such holding requirements. You really couldn't be active trading your own stuff, so I didn't really do that much. And I'm sure just like you guys, every trade I missed was a winner. Man, all those winners I missed.
Huge 10 bangers every time that you missed, sir.
But I just wanted to say one thing when I was looking at some of the spikes flows from a couple of weeks ago, and then just seeing some of the VIX axes, it just kind of reminded me of some trades I handled in the past. Not to talk about my past, but there was a client I dealt with many years ago that used to he wanted to hedge against market disasters using VIX calls at the time. And then he also, but didn't want to lose all the premium. He wanted to hedge out the roll down. So then he bought puts, and so basically had a strangle in the front month, and then decided the trade evolved to selling the strangle in the second month, and then so he would carry this position, and then roll it. This is many years ago, so I feel free talking about it. But it was just an interesting one, and it just always reminds me of. Because there was one expiration where it went through, where he held it through expiration, and the print just, went against him, and that was not fun. But it's just, the flows just kind of reminded me of that strategy. I don't know if anybody's still doing something like that, but it's kind of interesting.
Interesting stuff indeed. So let's keep on rolling. Know what else is interesting, at least for a lot of you out there, is UVXY these days, because it's doing some decent paper, even though like everything else in the ball space, it was down this week as well from an ADV perspective. Come into Showtime, it was also down from a net movement perspective, down about 0.8 of a point coming into showtime. It's right around a 590. I think it's at about 580 right now, so almost down a full point since our last show. The ADV is still pretty robust, 379,000, even though that's down about 17,000 from last week as well. So both VXX and UVXY are threatening that 400K level from an ADV perspective, which is interesting. And again, both of them were pretty close to it not too long ago, if not above it. So interesting times out there in the vol ETPs. In terms of top positions out there in UVXY, it's 80-20 calls versus puts yet again out there. That's kind of been the makeup we've seen for a little while. Let's just do a top 5 out here in UVXY. Number 5, again, these are the largest size open positions out there, listeners. 26,000 of the March 6 puts. Number 4, 27,000 of the March 6 halves. Number 3, 30,000, almost exactly, of the March 7 calls. Again, most of this March is expiring today, so this will be a different conversation next week. Number 2, 32,000 of the April 11 calls. And number 1 with the decent-sized bullet out there, 36,000 of the June 5s. 5-0, that sounds so anemic, but again, we're at about a 5 handle almost right now. So that's where we are out there in UVXY. In terms of what's active, what's lighting it up out there today, number 1 are the March 6 puts going out today. 27,000 of those bad boys trading up a storm out there. So that's also pretty much exactly how much was open coming into today's session. So it looks like some folks taking off their 26,000 and change of the March 6 puts today. Again, kind of hard to blame them. They're in the money, at least for right now. Get while the getting's good. Number 4, 24,000 of the April 5 halves. Number 3, about 24,000 as well of the March 6 calls. Number 4, 21,000 of the April 6s. And around out the top 5 here, we've got 14K of the April 6 puts. Mr. Rock Lobster, your crazies in the pitch chat, are they getting back into UVXY these days, sir?
I have to say, nobody is really talking about it just because it's, it's like, when you have a 6-pack of Coke and there's only one left, that's kind of what UVXY is like. It's just, there's not a lot of meat left on that bone, considering that all you want to do is short it anyway. So it's, I just can't, what are they waiting for on the split, by the way, for it to get to $2? You can't even split it 50-1 at that point. So I'm sorry. It's just that product's making me giggle right now.
All right. Since you're talking splits, I think we got to get to our volatility voicemail because we have a question about just that.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, welcome to the Vol voicemails, where you folks take the reins, your questions and comments. Mr. Rock Lobster's first question gets to exactly what you were just talking about, what I was referring to a little while ago on the show. This comes from Samson. He says, when do you think we'll see the reverse splits for VXX and UVXY? Seems like it should be any day. Yeah, it certainly does seem that way. Like we said, coming into showtime, we had VXX south of the 12 handle, and we have UVXY threatening the 5 handle there. So those are usually ballpark times. VXX typically around the 10 handle, and we're not that far away from it, listeners. In fact, we had Russell Rhodes on the show almost a month ago now coming on. He was saying when VXX was many points higher, he was starting to get a little leery because it was starting to get closer to that lower teens level, and that's where they start considering the reverse split. And that's what makes things, as he put it, a little bit funky out there. So he was actually staying clear of VXX for a while, and that was 3 or 4 weeks ago now. So it's been a little while. Mr. Rock Lobster, I'm sure you're playing the countdown game as well. Anything you want to share here with Samson, when we should be expecting these reverse split announcements, sir?
My timeline for VXX, the last cycle I wanted to have any active positions was the April cycle. So I thought we would have seen something by now. I would expect UVXY like any day, basically, to come out with something, because who wants to trade it? Who wants to trade it when it's $5?
Well, clearly not you or the crazies in your pitch. I think the only one who's crazy enough to trade is probably your buddy, Mr. Shortball there. He loves himself some UVXY, but outside of him, nobody else slinging the UVXY. So, yeah, we're kind of playing the wait-and-see game as well there, Samson, and everyone else who's asked. I think VXX has got a little bit more room to run. They got to get a little closer to the 10 handle probably. But UVXY, yeah, it's anybody's guess. That could be coming out as we speak during the show, for all we know. But yeah, if they continue on this trajectory, not much longer here for the low teens in the case of VXX and the single digits for UVXY. It's going to be bumping back up. That's kind of the name of the game with these products. Otherwise, they go to zero. So you got to get that reverse kick in, and it's got to be coming probably sometime soon. Unless the market obliges and we have a massive meltdown in vol pops, then the market will oblige and we won't need that reverse split. But outside of that, not so much. Mr. Tom, this is a good one for you here. Let's go to Track. A question from Track. That's an interesting handle. Maybe he's a race car driver. Saying, have any of you traded Spike's options yet? Any thoughts on trading them that you'd like to share? Well, I have some thoughts on this. I've been diving into the Spike's options waters of late, Mr. Tom, but you're the MIAX volatility option specialist here. What do you have to say for Track? He wants to know about the experience of trading Spike's options these days, sir.
Yeah, I actually had traded them before I got very involved in them, so it's kind of on my restricted list. So I can't personally trade them. Just so there's no bad blood there. So but anyway, yeah. So one thing I would say is that right now with the screens are on the wide side. We're hoping with this incentive program in the futures, there'll be a better hedge for a lot of the market makers and a lot of the traders to lay off some of their delta risk when they do trade the options. But I would say that one of the things people always forget is when markets are wide, things still do trade tight. When those other big trades went up, I saw them go up pretty close to the mids. You can always put orders in mid market or walk them up, or things do trade inside of screens. That's the only thing I could really talk about. But I can't. That's not a guarantee, obviously. But you can try it and see if typically I would think you might get some of the bite.
Yeah, I think that's good advice right now. I think what you mentioned earlier in the show about the futures incentive program, that's why I was excited about that, because that, of course, at the end of the day, should translate into even more liquidity in the options. Like I said, I've been playing in these for a little while now, listeners. And if you're going out there sight unseen, or maybe even only been trading VIX options, you might be a little bit spooked at first, because as Tom mentioned, they're kind of wide right now. And some of the strikes, the market makers are, shall we say, a little bit gun shy. They're showing us no bids on some of these strikes. But don't let that spook you. As Tom mentioned, you can come in and work your orders. You have to just be prepared to work your orders. So if you're seeing, a market a buck and change wide with no bid on a relevant at the money strike, if you have some sense of where these things should be, you're looking at some of the other vol products, get a bit of an estimate of what's going on out there. You should have a ballpark idea of where you could work this thing. Try it in the mid-market, see what happens. I have had experience in the past where they will, even though the market looks scary, they will step up to try to fill you if you have some sort of reasonable bid and offer out there. So get out there, start trying it a little bit. Don't be intimidated. Get in there, try it out. You have to babysit it a little bit. That's probably the advice I would give you out there. As long as you're okay babysitting, watching it a little bit, and working your orders, then you should be good. But yeah, it's an interesting experience. I encourage anyone listening to this show for a while, you like to trade SPY and everything else like that, check them out. It's interesting, a little bit intimidating at first, but once you wade into those waters, I think you'll have an interesting experience out there. All right, let's move on out to Fernando. He's got an interesting question, kind of the one a lot of people in the vol space are asking themselves right now. Fernando wants to know, now that VIX and spikes are below 20, what now? I've been playing the erosion game for a while, and it's worked pretty well. Do we just go back to loading up on the upside and waiting for the pop to happen again so we can do it all over again? Mr. Rock Lobster, this is an interesting question. Your compatriot there, the Meatball, has been alluding for a while that SIBO and MIAX and others who hold the vol products have been wanting these products to get lower again so they could reset and we could do the dance again, the pop to the upside. But I think Fernando has an interesting question, Mr. Rock Lobster. So put your vol man hat or invite him back into the room and ask him, as Fernando wants to know, what now, sir?
Well, I find that very funny because most of the time for VIX is spent below 20. So you have a whole lot of action between basically the 18 and the 10 handle.
We have so many new players now, sir, who've never seen a VIX below 20. So this is all new to them.
I think they're all going to be losing their minds. So there's a ton to do because remember, things become very more interesting from a decay point of view for VIX because all of the vol products, they trade off the futures, not the cash, and those things are still in the 20s. So there is plenty of room for VIX to go down. I know it's hard. Like the dough comes from the erosion in the futures, right? And when VIX is moving faster, that dough comes even faster. But ultimately, the erosion is just future premium has to come in. So there's plenty to do. There's also a lot more interesting trades because that erosion percentage versus VIX just gets huge. So it just brings different opportunities. Of course, you could go take my Vol Trading Club class and learn how to do that. But yeah, there's a lot of different opportunities. You just have to kind of divorce yourself from thinking that we're just going to go to 25 or 30 VIX every time we have a pop, as my little tirade about 10 minutes ago described. Like I had calls are paid for, but if you don't sell them, you're going to be grumpy. So but there is plenty of room still for things to go down on the downside. You could see VXX below like $10. Remember, it's hard to imagine, but it won't take much for VIX to go to 16, and those futures are in the 20s. So on a percentage basis, that's like, a VIX or a VXX down almost 25% from where it is right now. So it wouldn't take a lot for it to get to 10. And remember, it's holding those assets, and those assets are all futures, and 16 VIX can smash those to bits.
It can indeed. Mr. Tom, same question for you, sir. We have to say for Fernando, now that we're hanging out, at least for the time being, below 20, sir.
I mean, I just, I can't give advice, but I just always, when I see people with questions like this, I always like to just say, if you've been riding something that's going well for a long time, you're questioning it, I normally would take a little bit off and then maybe, or you can, we have these things called options where we can put a hedge on as buy some call options or something, or, one of the ways to keep playing the downside that I've seen people do too is, either you can sell call spreads, you can buy put spreads, so they're not as, so you're still capped, you're still in the game. That's all.
But that's not all for the show, sir, because it is time for the most difficult part. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody. Let's do it. Time for the crystal ball. And I got to put it out there. I'm not that bad at this vol prognostication thing coming into showtime. Remember last week, listeners, I was almost a literal bullseye. I think maybe 0.01 away. I was about as close as you could humanly be without having exact. I think it was on the point for a minute, then it ticked away. But, vol products very capricious out there. But coming into the end of the show now, spikes at a 1961. I do believe I was at a 19 double last week, a 1955. So that puts me, within 0.1 again, which is our frame of reference here for a bullseye, about 0.06 away. So a little bit wider this week, listeners, 0.06 away. The Rock Lobster was at an 1891, and Brian was at an 1890. Now, of course, if you go out to the VIX Cash, things get a little bit different out there. Let's see. VIX Cash coming into the end of the show. If I can get my quotes back up for me. There we go. Let's pull that bad boy up. There we go. That's helpful. All right, VIX Cash is at about almost a 1910. So that puts it about Rock Lobster is at an 1891. So he's about 0.2 of a point away. And that's right. He scummed Brian, who's at an 1890 out there last week. Oh, poor Brian, because he was looking, because if he won, he was going to win a chance to come back on the show out here this week. So unfortunately, not so much out here. 1937, if I'm looking right here, actually, let's see, at a live print here for VIX Cash. So that actually makes it worse for the two of you. 1937 puts you guys about half a handle away for Brian and about the same for the Rock Lobster. So, yeah, I'm about 0.17 away on VIX Cash and about 0.06 away on Spikes. So I think I'm going to go winner chicken dinner for myself 2 weeks in a row. 2 bullseyes, particularly on spikes out here this week in a row. So not bad. I got to say, I was feeling a little bit. This is the first time I was below the 20 handle in my prognostication. Not much, and just a little bit. And you know what, listeners? Once again, it paid off. I was feeling some, but not a ton. I wasn't feeling the mother of all erosions that these folks were feeling. So let's go forward to this week. And once again, I went bravely first last time. I shall bravely pave the way again this week. I'm not afraid. I ain't afraid of no ghost. Let's do it again. Let's go 3 for 3. See if we can get the hat trick of bullseyes out here in the vol space this week. So I was at a 19 double this week, at about exactly that level in both VIX cash and about spikes out there right now. So let's see what we got cooking for this time next week. I am feeling a little bit less vol on the old radar. The question is, do I feel an 18 handle or not? I don't. We'll definitely blip there. We were blipping there not too long ago. But I do think, once again, we shall blip back up, to use the Marvel terminology of the blip. So I'm going to give myself a 19.25 next week, down a third of a point. All right, I have set the table. Mr. Rock Lobster, since you scummed Brian last week, you were 0.01 closer than our guest. So I will let you go next, sir. What are you feeling?
I mean, if we were 18.95 like 5 minutes ago, you dragged this out to the last minute.
All that matters, sir, is where we are right now. So
I have to say, this is really weird for me. What was your number? 19 and change?
19.25.
I'm not even going to give you the satisfaction of scumming you. I'm going to say 20.01.
Wow, back in the other direction. Wow, your compatriot, the meatball, will be offended at that. I don't think he's gone higher once all year. 20.01. Wow, you think we've hit the doldrums for a little while here, huh?
A little back and forth. A little back. I'm not seeing this recovery in technology stocks. They're all looking sad. So. That's where I am.
Now you're spooking me. Now you're spooking me. Now you make me think I should go lower because you're going higher. All right, Mr. Tom, round us out, sir. We got 19.25 for me. Upside, 20.01, an unusual bit of upside for the Rock Lobster. What are you feeling, he who is nicknameless right now, sir?
Well, sadly, I'm going to be right in the middle of you guys. I like, I think we're going to trend lower for a few days and maybe back up. But one question I have for you: next Friday is Good Friday. Markets are closed. Are you doing a show on Thursday? Or?
Oh, you're right. We have no show next week. So
are we pushing this out?
This will have to be for, I guess, next Thursday, which you're right. I didn't even factor that into my calculation. You're throwing a wrench in my work, sir. What are you doing to me? I had it all carefully planned out.
I was going to interrupt you, but I didn't want to interrupt you before. So for a week out, I would, 2 weeks out, basically, I would say I'm going to go back lower. I'm going to go 18.25 in spikes.
18.25 for 2 weeks. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, if you want to put a second guess in for 2 weeks out, you can have it, sir. Go ahead.
You know what? I have some confidence. I just see us beating around this number a little bit. I have to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not too adverse to mine 2 weeks out either, quite frankly. I can maybe see us going a little bit higher for that, maybe 19, back to my 19 double. So maybe I'll put that in. I'll put that as a secondary thing. Perhaps I'll give myself a range. How about that? Because we're going 2 weeks. 19 double, perhaps, for 2 weeks. All right, there you go, listeners. Because Tom, with his darned accuracy of scheduling, throwing a wrench in the works there. I'm at 19.25. The Rock Lobster's at 20.01. Tom's at 18.25 for 2 weeks from now. If you extend ours out by about 2 weeks, Rock Lobster's staying the same way. I'm staying pretty close to up a little bit, 19.55. All right, that's your market. What's your market? Hit us up. I want to hear from you as we keep on rolling. As we go into our final segment, it's time to figure out what the heck we have cooking that may interest all you folks out there. There we go. There's that music we all love. Of course, we also dread it because that means we've come to the end of this program. But before we go, let's go back around the horn. Let's start with you, Mr. Tom. I'm hearing rumors out there on the old interwebs. You're becoming a bit of a volatility YouTube sensation, sir. What do you got up your sleeve there?
Well, with MIAX, we put out a little educational video on spikes. I call it Spikes 101, but it's a brief introduction to the spikes products, options, futures, the index. And you can find it right now either, search on LinkedIn under the MIAX Exchange Group, or on YouTube. You can, search for the same thing or my name, and it should pop up. It's a 10-minute video. Just kind of goes into some of the basics of the Spikes products.
There you go. Give them that URL once again really quickly so they can check it out for themselves.
Yeah, I don't have a specific URL. It's really my name and LinkedIn, or it's you got to search my name in YouTube, and it will be on the website soon. It's just not on there yet, and we just went out with it a little bit early before we had it on the website. And then if you go to MIAXoptions.com/spikes, you can find all the information on spikes you need.
There you go. MIAXoptions.com/spikes is the place to go for all that cool info we've always talked about, the data, historical, current quotes, press releases. You can get all the stuff about what's going on in the world, the spikes, the futures, and the options. Links to a cool show called Vol Views, and hopefully sometime soon link to Tom's new gig over there. Meantime, you can search for him on YouTube. Last name JARCK, JARCK is how you spell that, listeners. You can find all of that Spikes goodness and a whole bunch more. Mr. Rock Lobster, if I want some more Vol goodness, where should I go? What should I do?
.com, go to the Vol Trade Club. One of these days we'll have some good swag, but or Mark's Vol Edge product, both those things. Again, trying to use that future curve to your advantage and make better vol trades. Simple as that.
Unless you're talking the crystal ball, in which case you got to come to me, listeners, because, 2 weeks in a row now. It's getting scary. It's getting spooky. We're going for 3, even though next week we got a bit of a punt. And, of course, you want to know where to go for the latest in execution services and trading technology. Look no further than MatrixExecutions.com. MATRIX. Executions.com is the place to go. A lot of information and all the stuff that's going up over there. The latest, of course, in execution services and trading technology. On behalf of everybody over there in Matrix, and Tom, everybody over there in MIAX land, and the Rock Lobster, and indeed myself, I thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live, for sending in such great questions and comments. Keep them coming. And actually, we got a little bit of a double dose coming for you today, listeners. Usually this is the end of our broadcast week, but nope. Stay tuned if you're listening live. We're going to rejigger a little bit. Then we'll be back in about 25 minutes with the advisor's options. So if you want to hear what's cooking in the world of asset management and advisors, from a volatility, from a trading, from a trending, all sorts of great perspectives. We got our buddy Matt from ORATS coming on, as well as John Cherry from Northern Trust. You want to hear what one of the largest asset managers on the planet is doing from a vol and from an options perspective. And we're talking about all that and a lot more in about 25 minutes. If you're listening live after the fact, if you're listening on demand, just hit next on your device of choice. It should be ready for you there. Of course, as Tom mentioned, holiday next week, so no show next week. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with another episode of Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at MIAXoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution and trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or Search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.